Hello, everyone. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our joint project together with ISTQB and Women in Tech that calls Women in Testing, and let's talk about it. I'm very happy to be here and to see all of you here. And today we will talk about very important topic. But before that, I want to introduce Women in Tech. So, Women in Tech is a world biggest and leading organization of women that has more than 300,000 members worldwide. And we operate on four pillars: it's education, business, digital inclusion, and advocacy. And our main goal is onboard 5 million women and close the gap between uh, women and technology. And I think we are sharing the same goal with ISTQB, and especially with this webinar series. It's our third joint webinar series together, and I think it's a very, very successful project. I'm very excited about that. Debbie will talk more about ISTQB and about our today's topic, AI in software testing. That's all we need to know. And Claudia, who is the president of ISTQB, will be joining us today, sharing her extensive experience in this field and beyond. So, hello, Debbie. Floor is
Hello.
yours.
Yeah.
Please
Hi.
tell us more about ISTQB. I am sure a lot of people know, but for those who don't know yet.
Thank you ever so much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for this series of seminars. It's been absolutely fantastic to be part of, and the response has been phenomenal. So thank you. And the ISTQB, the International Software Testing Qualifications Board, certification body. It's all about making sure that people have got the right skills to support industry, to support our broader environment, if you like, and software development, making sure things work. The certifications are pretty, well recognized globally. We have over 1 million people certified now in ISTQB. So it is, I think it's fair to say, the leading global standard in software testing certification. A little tiny bit about the Women in Testing program, because I know that Claudia is going to touch on it also. It's a program that promotes diversity and inclusion in the software testing community. We kicked it off a few years ago, and it's all about supporting and highlighting the contribution of women to the industry. We like to ask women for their perspectives, to share information, and to also share knowledge. The initiative is there to inspire, empower, and of course advance women in their testing roles around the world. Claudia Zasiga, I can't wait to see her on stage here. I think she's here now. Claudia, hello.
Thank you. Hi, Debbie.
It's always such a pleasure to have you speaking, Claudia. And I know that today's subject is really going to press some buttons for people. It's AI, and it's a hot topic. And I've heard you talk about this several times, so people are really in for a treat. A very quick introduction, Claudia. So 25 years or plus experience in software testing? You're the president of ISTQB and a member of the German testing board. You're also the consulting division leader of Imbus AG. I'll read what I've got here. It says you're a dedicated trainer, lecturer, and standards advocate. You contribute to international standards, such as being part of the working committee of the Deutsche Institute for Standards. And I'm told that you're passionate about test management, process improvement, chuck AI in there, and advancing women in tech. I'm going to ask to be removed from stage, Claudia, because I know that you've got lots of information to share. Anybody who's tuning in to watch this session with Claudia, pop your questions into the comments, and we're going to do our very best to find some time at the end for Claudia to answer them. Claudia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you very much. I'm very honored and flattered to be invited to give a presentation here at this third webinar from the Women in Tech and ISTQB Women in Testing initiative. And I would like to talk about women in AI and testing. I have been working in AI since 2019, coming actually from a computer science background. And when I move into a new topic, I always need to understand the basics. So I started to look out and discover for me, or research for me, the AI basics, and I would like to share that with you. And that presentation, that timeline has been around for, I don't know, 2-3 years now. Of course, updated, so you get the latest version, but that has been around for quite some time. And then last year, I was approached by the UN Women Empowerment Program, and they said, well, what about women in AI? And this actually kind of triggered my brain into a completely different direction. And then I did some research in women in AI, and it was quite interesting to see what I came up with, and I'm going to share that with you. And after that step, I moved to testing, since I'm coming from testing, having done testing and quality assurance for more than 25 years. The same reflection came back. What about women in testing? So this is what I would like to share. I'll start with a brief overview, and it really is brief, 6-7 slides on AI in basics, and then I will cover the women in AR part. And since I don't know if you are familiar with testing, with software testing, I will also cover the basics of software testing and then move on to the women in testing. And I think I can wrap it up to give my personal view on the Women in Testing initiative from ISTQB, because I think we have some great news also there. So AI has been around for quite some time. A lot of people might think, or some people might think, with the advent of ChatGPT in November 2022, AI was just invented there. This is wrong. AI has been, if you, depending on the literature you used, has started in the 1950s and the 1940s, which is called the early days of AI. And my starting point, and this is my personal timeline, so I picked the events and the description. So my personal starting point is actually the Turing test, which is a test developed and published by Alan Turing back in 1950 to figure out if a machine is intelligent or not. And how does he do that? He says, if you have 2 rooms, and in one room is a human intelligence, and in the other one you have a machine with perhaps an artificial intelligence, if you send a question to both rooms and you get an answer back, and you can't distinguish by looking at the answers whether it is coming from a human or a machine, then he said that machine is intelligent. And that was, as I said, already back in 1950. If you move a little further on, we have a group of scientists in Dartmouth College in summer 1956 who started the research field of artificial intelligence. They started the topic, if you want to coin it like that, and decided and agreed to work on it and start this research area. And from the very beginning, if you look at the content which they were working on, you always have 2 separate streams. One is what is called subsymbolic logic, and one which is called symbolic logic. And you can see it already here on the screen. Subsymbolic logic, what the AI field tried to achieve, is to mimic the human thinking, to mimic the human brain. And the little figure on the top, you have the first mathematical depiction of a neuron, which was published in 1958 by Frank Rosenblatt. So that's also a long time ago. So that was the very first start to have a mathematical formula for thinking how a neuron would trigger. That is subsymbolic AI. And then on the other side, you always had symbolic AI, where you would explicitly model knowledge, making statements, for example, if we stick in the medical field, where a lot of symbolic or expert systems have been developed, if you see symptom A and symptom B, then you can deduce following disease or following illness. And this is actually the second part where a lot of research has been sent on deduction techniques, which are based on mathematical logic. So this was from the very beginning. The next 20 years, further research was done in symbolic AI and subsymbolic AI. No big surprise, from a single neural networks were developed. So we were hooking up lots of networks. We have further advances in the deduction techniques, so some of them are now automated, and we have lots of other stuff. For example, if you just consider the deduction techniques, if you build up your rule-based system, you need smart search algorithms. So search algorithms are also a field of research in the area of AI. And then programming languages actually are also partially in there. And the reason why that point is in there, because I had to do Prolog. I had to program in Prolog when I was back at the university. So using these languages, Prolog and Lisp, you could do this mathematical deduction. So this is the start of AI already more than 80 years ago, or 1940 would be 85 years ago. Interesting to see, given the fact that now AI and machine learning is really the big hype. AI was not a success story all along. We have the Lighthill report in 1973, which was issued or which was requested by the British Council on Science. And Sir James Lighthill developed or actually wrote that report stating more or less that it would not be worth spending a lot of money on AI. So the governmental funding of AI was decreased, and the first ice age, and that's the reason for the little snowflake, the first ice age came up. Of course, despite the fact that funding was reduced, people were still working on it. And we see a second or a third phase here where the idea was, or where the hype topic was actually knowledge-based systems or expert-based systems. So you have a lot of knowledge-based systems. I already said in the medical field, you had quite a number of them. And for example, you also had knowledge-based systems if you wanted to play a game. And you might perhaps know my next little figure here. In 1997, there was a famous series of chess games where Garry Kasparov, who was the residing world champion at that point of time, was playing against a machine, against an artificial intelligence. That was Deep Blue, which was developed by IBM, which was using a brute force approach with lots and lots of computing power, searching possible moves along the trees where you would have the different moves you could make in the chess play. And they played 5 games, and Deep Blue won 4 out of them. And that was back then quite an uproar, because it was the first time that a machine, an intelligent machine, actually beat a human being. That was an expert-based system where the rules of the chess was hard-coded. And then with, as I said, with a lot of processing power, it actually managed to beat Garry Kasparov. So knowledge-based systems were a hype. Advances, again, were also done in the mathematical models. So probabilistic reasoning was further explored, and research was being done there. Now, after that time, starting 2000 or 2010, the focus shifted slightly from these knowledge-based systems more to machine learning. So machine learning typically done with neural networks. And if we look at that, we also have a quite nice example for that, because in 2016, a machine or an artificial neural network that was actually trained to play Go did beat the master back then, the Go master back then, who was Lee Sedol. And here you can see with these 2 examples already a shift in the usage of AI technology. Deep Blue was still using a rule-based system. AlphaGo was using a neural network which was trained to learn how to play that game. Why did they do that? Because in Go, you have more opportunities, you have more pieces to play with. So the statement was that you can't use a brute force approach with Go because it would just be way too big in order to do it. So they started to look into neural networks and how you could train the neural networks, how machine learning could be done. And actually, machine learning with neural networks, that is the name of the game right now. So if we are looking at what is currently understood by AI, if media is talking about AI, they're typically talking about neural networks, artificial neural networks in different architectures, but basically artificial neural networks, and they're talking about statistical learning algorithms. Now, why did it hit, or why was it so successful? And this is always the question I ask myself. I need to understand, why was it working now, given the fact that the first neuron was already described in 1958? And the reason, I think, is, if you think about it, is relatively easy to understand. The processing power, the hardware, was getting cheaper and cheaper. So the increase of low-cost computing power enabled neural networks where you can mimic each neural network by a processor, for example, to do a lot of computing. The second reason, and I think the more important reason, is actually the availability of electronic data. If you go back 30, 40 years, and let's stick with 40 years, we didn't have the internet yet. Perhaps the first advances, or the first versions of the ARPANET, but not the internet yet. We didn't have the digital revolution yet in industry, so we didn't have a lot of data coming actually from industry. We didn't have smartphones, mobile phones yet. We didn't have all the social media where you get lots and lots of data. So if you go back 40 years to 1985, training a neural network with the amount of data we have now and training it for the price we get now was just simply not possible. Of course, there were advances in the learning techniques. Of course, there were advances also in the architecture. So we have new variations of neural network architectures, but having it being possible to get it calculated cheap and having the data to train it, that was actually the game changer. And that is what is right now typically understood when media is talking about AI. And the latest hype, at least in Germany, I'm located in Germany, is generative AI, in particular large language models. And that has to do with ChatGPT. ChatGPT 3.5 was released in November 2022, and I think it hit the community in early spring 2023. And that just is, again, another game changer, because now AI components, generative AI components or language models, were available to everybody who had a computer, who could use an internet browser, because the access to such models was very easy. The costs were very, very limited. The free version cost you nothing. The professional version is, I think, $20, $25 a month. So it's relatively modest. And the quality of the results is quite amazing. So with the advent of large language models like ChatGPT, AI left its niche as an expert technique where it has been all along. People have been working and developing AI applications all along, but it left that little niche and moved to the public. And now everybody knows what large language model is and what ChatGPT is, or the others, BART or Gemini or DeepSeek or Llama or Claude or whatever model you want to use. And I would like to just give me 3-4 more slides. I would like to show you on one slide what I'm talking about when I say artificial neural networks. I want to spend one slide on learning algorithms and then 2 slides on large language models, since ChatGPT and Co are really the hot thing right now. So artificial neural networks, the depiction of this one little neuron we already saw. Now you can take lots of neurons, you can combine them. You have here on the left-hand side the input layer, you have the hidden layers in the middle, and then you have the output layers. What is happening in between? Well, you feed in your data on the input layer, then these connections between the neurons have weights. At the output of every neuron, you have a so-called activation function where you sum up the input, multiply it with the weighting factor, and then you have this activation function, and you will forward another signal. So you are processing the information through the network, and then you do a feedback loop. And within this feedback loop, you're changing the weights and you are learning to adapt to the input. This is basically how neural networks learn. Of course, this is just an example with 3 layers with altogether 8 neurons. If we are talking about ChatGPT 3.5, we're talking more than 80 something layers with lots and lots of neurons. And the optimization of the weights, this is what is actually done when we are talking about learning and the number of weights. For example, again, from ChatGPT, and I'm just using ChatGPT because that's such a well-documented model. The newer ones are not yet at that stage, but the optimization for ChatGPT, we're talking about 175 billion parameters that they were changing in the learning process. So this is the neural network. Now, how does the learning process look like? And basically, we have three different ways of learning when we're talking about machine learning, and of course, ... all combinations. So number one is supervised learning. This is the way you're learning when the data that you use for training is labeled. Let us say that you want to distinguish or classify fruits and you give it pictures with oranges and apples, then these pictures are labeled and we can check later on whether it is labeled as an orange, whether it's labeled as an apple, and whether the neural network properly learned it. So for classification, where the result is known, supervised learning is done quite a lot. We have two more types. Another type is unsupervised learning, where you don't have that labeling and where the neural network itself finds meanings, finds correlation between the data. And this is something which you would use for regression or for predictions. And then we have a third type of learning where you don't have training data, which is called reinforcement learning, where you actually have a reward function. Games, for example, are learned or trained like that. The reward function for making a particular good move in Go or in chess is that the probability that you will win the game increases. So games are trained like that. And also, for example, your vacuum robots that run around your room at home, they learn by touching the boundaries where they're allowed to go and where they would do the best vacuuming. So these are the machine learning aspects. And as I said, you can have combinations. Again, if we go back to ChatGPT 3.5, they used a combination of a supervised learning in addition with reinforcement learning with human intervention. So they really had lots of people sitting there looking at the results and then deciding whether it was a good result or not. Now we talked about neural networks, we talked about the learning, and let's bring it a little bit together when we're talking about large language models. So what are large language models? Basically, they are neural networks which were trained with huge amounts of text, so data in the sense of text. They crawled the internet, they were using PDFs, they were using Wikipedia, so they trained on text. And now what these language models do is they predict the next word. If you take the tiny little example I have here, the quick brown, and then you're looking for the next word, you would feed this first part of the sentence into your large language model, and then it would do the calculation and give you back a probability index. It's not a probability because it doesn't add up to 1, but it's a probability index. And if you look at the three little examples, you can see that fox has a probability value of 0.7, dog 0.3, and cat 0.4. And then it determines if we say the strategy is to always take the next word with the highest probability index, you would take fox. Then again, you would enter that sentence and you would get the next word and then the next word and the next word. So you are building up the output that is generated by the LLM word by word. So what the large language model does, and each of them is actually a prediction of the next word, but, and this is the important part, it is not giving you the next word based on its truth value, but on the probability relations between different words that it learned during the training phase. And this is also where some of the disadvantages of large language models come from, because given the fact that it is based on probability, it can also hallucinate stuff and just make something up which is not valid. So if we just have a look at the strengths and weaknesses of large language models, Of course, they are very good at understanding languages. They have been trained on language. And we're not just talking about human languages, we're also talking about programming languages. That's the reason why they can really nicely be used if you want to do some coding, whether you're doing it to develop a product or whether you're doing it to do test automation. They are very versatile in use. If you have been playing around with ChatGPT, I'm pretty sure you tried several things. I personally tried to do some test specifications. I also planned a city tour to Barcelona, and I also asked it to write a poem for my mother's birthday. So you can almost use it for whatever you want. In general, it's very, very fast once the training has been done. Training might take a long time, but once the training has been done, it may be very fast. It's scalable. You can have smaller and larger models. And if you allow it, it will also adapt to your needs. So if you're allowed to extend the training, you can adapt it to what you want to. The weaknesses kind of mirror that. The quality of the results, of course, depends on the training data. If you have bad information coming in, it can only mirror this bad information going out. So it really highly depends on the quality of the training data. You need to give it a context because different words mean different things. So if we're talking about bank, it could be in connection with the financial sector. It could be also in connection with some recreational stuff. So you need to provide it some context. It might lose in the middle. It might forget some stuff in the middle that you told it to take care of. And then you can point to it and then it will nicely apologize and make another mistake. So it's by far not perfect. And the most important part is it hallucinates. So it makes up new content which might not be true. And you will always have to have a look at it as a human being and make sure that what you get back from a large language model is actually good enough, whether it really reflects the reality. Despite the fact that you get back beautiful sentences, you might get the impression that the large language model thinks. It does not. It is just a language model which provides you the next word based on these calculations between the different words. And if you want to do some fancy calculation, please don't use ChatGPT or any other language models. It's a language model, not a calculator. I'm very well aware that that you can ask a language model to do some mathematics, and then in the back end, it will write some Python code or some other code and actually do the calculation for you. But it's not the original intention. And if you want to do stuff like that, just use a different tool altogether. We don't have to do everything with a large language model. So this is the intro part to AI. Now, when I developed this timeline at the very beginning, it didn't even bother me that I only had men down there. And only when I got the request from the UN web ladies, I was really, it was kind of eye-opening. I was really looking at my timeline a little different way. And I said, well, there have to be some women around that actually did some work. Can't be that I'm just talking about Turing and Kasparov, and here you have Marvin Minsky and Claude Shannon. So some very famous people in computer science. There have to be some women around. And this was actually a very, very interesting task to look who did some work in AI. And there are plenty of them. There are plenty of them. So, and I sorted them by kind of by age, so they follow the timeline as my gentleman did on the bottom. So if we start, I would like to introduce to you Karen Jones. Karen Jones already died. She was born in 1936, and she is considered one of the pioneers of computer linguistics. So if you trace the large language models back to somebody, it would definitely, or to a group of people, Karen Jones would definitely be in there. She did pioneer work, groundbreaking work for computer linguistics. She did groundbreaking work for search engines, so the mechanisms that are used in Google and in other search engines. She also did work on speech recognition. And like most of the ladies, or most of the women in AI, she worked in academia, so she had a chair at the University of Cambridge. if we move a little further on, so Karen Jones was born 1935. Now we're moving to a German computer scientist who was born in 1954, Katharina Morik, and she worked on machine, or she still works. She's emerited, but she still works at the university, and she's working on machine learning and data mining. And that kind of also follows along the path that machine learning was getting more and more important, and the dealing with huge amounts of data, starting with the availability of more and more data, became important. Like Karen Jones, she's also in academia. She has a chair, or had a chair, at the University of Dortmund, and she's still the co-director of the Lamar Institute. So that is from the basic work on computer linguistics. Now we're moving to machine learning and data mining. If we go a little bit further, a couple of years later, we have Rosalind Picard, who is an American researcher, a computer scientist, who looked at a different side of AI. She's looking at the interaction, or of the interaction actually between AI and humans, and how an AI can recognize feelings. So she started a research area called effective computing. So yet another facet of AI. And she also worked in academia at MIT, but she is one of the few ones actually in this timeline who also started a company and was a businesswoman. Moving further on, we have Cordelia Schmidt, who was born a couple of years later, again in 1967. And she is working on, or she did her major work on image recognition and computer vision. What she was actually working on is that if you have a picture, and for example, you have a square, that you can use the information in the picture in order to deduce whether it is a chair, whether it is a box, whether it is a table. So using geometrical information, she moved to the content of the images. She is a research director at Area in Grenoble. She also did her PhD there. And starting with her, we see some more who really encouraged girls and young women to study sciences, technologies, engineering, or math. So the principal idea that girls, young women can also do great jobs, can also excel in these areas. She was also looking at that and trying to help with that. Fei Li is one of my female researchers I admire. I have to say I admire the most. She did lots and lots of work, more than 200 papers in all areas of artificial intelligence and machine learning, in computer vision, in computational neurosciences. And in addition to that, she started with some more generic projects. She started to develop ImageNet. So if you are looking for data pictures actually to train your system on, you will find this database with lots and lots and lots of labeled data. She started the initiative AI for All, so that everybody can use AI, so that it would be more democratic. And she, like the others, she is also in academia, so she has it, and she is still around and active. She has a chair at the Stanford University, and she is also a co-director for an human-centered AI institute at Stanford. So a very, very, very knowledgeable researcher. In my timeline, the second last is Ulrike from Luxembourg. And her research area, again, puts a different focus on AI. She's working on statistical methods in order to find weaknesses or strength of machine learning algorithms. So she's trying to find a way to determine whether they're performing properly or not, which I think is nowadays becoming more and more interesting. We need to understand how they're actually working, whether they have biases or not, whether they're distorting information or not. So she is looking into this area. She is also interested in ethics and AI, and like the others, she is in academia and has a chair at the University of Tübingen. And then the last woman I would like to present to you. You might know, I did not before I started to look into this topic, and this is Mira Murati. She is a very interesting person. She was born in Kosovo actually, and moved with her parents to Canada, I think when she was 15 or 16. She studied at Dartmouth College and did her bachelor there. And then she moved to different companies. For example, she was the project lead at Tesla. She was looking how the Tesla cars were developed. Starting from 2018 to 2024, she was the chief technology officer at OpenAI, responsible for the development of ChatGPT and DALL-E. And DALL-E is the system, the AI that is actually producing pictures. She quit OpenAI in October 2024, so last year, about 8 months ago now, or 9 months ago. And this year in February, she started her own AI company, which is called Thinking Machines Lab. And she pulled a couple of scientists from the other companies. And I think we will have just to wait and see what they're actually producing. She is not at the university, as you can tell, but she went through a lot of very well-known companies in her career, and founding her own company is only the last step. So if we move on, if we look at this panel of women, it is amazing. So they are around and they are doing excellent research, and from the very beginning, groundbreaking work and excellent research, and are relevant now. I was honestly, I was very, very impressed. Moving to testing. Now, what is testing all about? If you are a customer and if you want to have a product developed, you typically look for a company, you tell them what the product is supposed to do, and either they are implementing it or you're implementing it. So we have some development, and at some point of time, a piece of software will drop out of the development. The interesting question is now, does the software do what you want it to do? And how can we see if it's doing the proper stuff? So how can we test it? So besides development, you should look at the quality assurance activities. You should check whether the software is actually doing what you want it to do. And then you can tick it off and say, yes, it's working fine. And software testing, like AI, has been around for quite some time. What you see here is actually the so-called V model from Barry Boehm from 1979, where you have the testing activities here on the right-hand side of the V. A couple of years later, when we moved into the Agile world, so with 2001, with the Agile Manifesto, we were not only doing the V model once, but we were working in sprints. And from working several times, you also need to do the checking, the testing several times. So test automation came into play starting 1998, 2000, 2001. Test automation became more and more important. And about 10, 12 years later, DevOps moved together the worlds of developing stuff and the world of running stuff. So operations and development were joined together, and testing has to be looked at through the entire life cycle. So we're not only testing when you are developing the stuff, but also when you are in operation, you will have to monitor it all the time. You will have to make sure that it is still working properly there. So this is continuous testing with DevOps. Testing has lots of different facets. Test levels we already saw before. We have the 4 different test levels in the V model. We have a test process where you have to follow the different steps from planning testing activities, the analysis of the test basis, then actually designing the test cases, developing or designing the test data, implementing automation scripts, actually doing the execution, and then the completion. So we have the test process. Then we have lots and lots of techniques how to derive test cases, specification-based techniques where you just look at the the requirement specification or the architectural specification. Then structure-based techniques where you build your test cases along the code that you have, trying to cover different statements, trying to cover different decisions, and so on. And we have a couple of experience-based techniques, which something like error guessing, where you rely on your experience where previously bugs have been found, then you're expecting that they might still be around an interface that has been buggy previously, or something like that. So we have test levels, test techniques, test process, and of course, test automation, which you can do in different ways, and also different test types. Functionality is the test type that is always tested, but you can also look at usability, you can also look at security, you can also look at performance, or these days also at digital accessibility, so you can test for a lot of things. So these 3 slides actually are just here to give you a brief introduction to testing and also to show you the different aspects and facets. And we will see these aspects again when we come back to women in testing. Now, same timeline, right? Same timeline as we had before for the AI development. Now, what about testing? What about women in testing? And this was for me a much more thrilling task because I'm coming from testing. I did computer science at the university. I did not do AI, but I am doing testing now for 27 years. And what about women there? My very first woman, or the very first one I want to present to you, is actually Grace Murray Hopper, which did a lot of, again, some basic research and some basic work in the area of computer science. She developed the first compilers. She was pushing for a higher level language, just not always dealing with zeros and ones. She was also developing the programming language COBOL. And actually the reason why perhaps most of the testers know her is because she documented the actual first bug, which was still for a computer with relay technique back in 1947. With 60, she retired, and 2 years later, she was called back because they had some issues with the quality of software, and then she worked for another 15, 16 years. And she was also in the US Marine at the end as a rear admiral. Back then, I mean, she was born in 1906 and started to work in 1935 or 36. There wasn't even computer science as a topic around. She studied mathematics and physics. So I'm amazed. I really appreciate or value all the work that she did. Now we're making a jump and we're moving about 40 years, and I would like to present to you Dorothy Graham. I had the fortune to meet her in person back, 25, 26 years ago, and did do a little bit of projects together. Dorothy did a lot of work in test automation, and she did a lot of work in reviews. So she wrote books on test automation and on software inspections. She started the certification scheme at the British Computer Society, the ISEP, which is a predecessor of ISTQB. So she's also very, very relevant. She's like also the mother of ISTQB, if you want to put her. She had her own company, so she is a businesswoman. None of the ladies I'm presenting to you now are actually at universities. And she received, because of all of her excellent work, she received a number of excellence rewards, not only from ISTQB, also from Eurostar. And she is a wonderful person, very approachable, very easy to work with, very willing to share information. So it was a great pleasure to work with her and learn with her. The next woman in testing I would like to present to you is Isabel Evans. She's again a British software tester. And like with the AI, we now see different facets of testing. She's actually also in test automation, but for her, test automation is the goal. But in order to achieve it, you need to work with people. So she's focusing on the human factors in test automation and is giving excellent talks on how to work in teams, how to improve the team culture, and how to make projects a success. She also wrote several testing books and received the Eurostar Testing Excellent Award. I had the chance to meet her at a testing conference in Budapest, and I was inspired. I was really touched. The next two ladies, I put them together because the two of them together wrote a number of books on testing in the agile environment, or agile testing books, and they developed a holistic approach where you need to look at all testing altogether. Both of them have their own companies and are still working. And if you are working in agile development, there is no way around Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory if you want to do testing in the agile development. So I'm very, very impressed by the work they did and they still continue to do. My personal hero is actually Katrina Kloki. Katrina is when I was in desperate need of some insight on DevOps, she was a test manager at a bank in New Zealand, and in that time she wrote a book on a guidance to DevOps testing, which helped me a lot. It is excellent written, very easy to understand, very inspiring. It gives you really deep insight how testing in DevOps should do. Since then, she moved on. So from being a manual tester, test automation person, test manager, now she is responsible for, she's a CTO, a Chief Technology Officer of a different company. So she moved up, and is now responsible for the entire development. She is also a lot, it's like Katharina Murk, she's also a lot into community building, into fostering young girls. She has a very strong presence on the social media. So if you check for her name, you might want to find her. You not might, you will find her, and I might meet her at some point of time because I haven't met her yet. We just exchanged emails. The last woman I would like to present to you, I did not know before. This is something that really came up during my search on the internet for women in testing, and I would like to present to you Angie Jones. If you look at her website, she doesn't say that she is a tester. She is a developer and automation architect. Actually, she is doing test automation, but she is looking at it from the programming point of view. And automating tests, writing test script, building up an automation architecture is nothing else than programming. She holds a lot of patents. She's also very present in the social media. And she also has this strong emphasis on supporting girls. In her case, it's Black Girls Code or Tech Girls. So she is also quite amazing and very, very young, at least in comparison to me. So also for women in testing, we have a lot of very passionate women that did groundbreaking work, which was really, really very valuable. And I was really thrilled when I learned from all of them. And I did check, of course, their CV and what they were actually working on. And I'm giving this presentation now for the third time. And I have to say, after the presentations, I always get feedback. You should think of this person, or please include this person. And I'm very happy just to see that there are still a lot of more women in testing that are around that I'm not even aware of. So there are lots of people out there, and we really don't need to shy away. Women can make excellent contributions also in the area of testing. Let me just briefly move to the Women in Testing initiative. Debbie was already talking about it, and I'm not going to talk about ISTQB. I'll just skip over that. But just briefly, because I've seen some changes there too. The Women in Testing initiative from ISTQB started in 2022, and we got in contact with the UN Women Empowerment Principles Program. We had different focus last year. For example, we had women in testing. You can see here on the right-hand side, we're trying to have panel discussions and meetups wherever we go. We started a lot of initiatives here on the left-hand side, interviews and the webinar with the UN Webs. Then we fortunately came in contact with the Women in Tech. And this is where we are right now. We are in the joint webinar series with Women in Tech, and I'm very, very proud to be the third, to talk on the third webinar. The last thing actually makes me equally proud, because about 3 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago, I gave a keynote at the French testing conference at the JFTL, which is held in Paris. And we had more than 1,200 participants, so a huge crowd. And women in AI, so the topic of women in AI and testing was the first keynote starting at 9:15 on the conference day. And this is a shift in awareness of other people, because the program committee, I think there's not even one woman on there, but the importance that we really look at women in AI, and in that case, it was also women in testing, is growing. People see the need to talk about that, and being invited as a keynote is excellent, excellent. And hopefully more stuff will follow. And this is my last slide. And if you have questions or comments or some more ladies I should look at, I would be happy to do that.
Claudia, thank you so much. I can see the comments stream here, and we've got a lot of thank yous, and we have quite a few questions as well. So I am going to ask the technical guys if we can get started. Basma wants to learn about AI testing. What do you need to do to be perfect at that?
If you want to learn about AI testing, I think you need to understand the characteristics of AI systems, that it is a probabilistic system, that you will have a problem with test oracles. So if you understand the characteristics, you have to adapt your testing according to that. And then, of course, it's like with all other testing too, it's learning on the job. You have to just test it and see how it goes along. Being an ISTQB president, of course, it's my pleasure to point you to the ISTQB AI testing syllabus. We have a syllabus that really gives a quite nice introduction into AI in general, talking about the quality characteristics, talking about the challenges it really poses for testing, and also gives you techniques, also defines the test levels you should look at. So if you want to get a head start in AI testing, download the syllabus, take a training, take the exam, but download the syllabus and just read through I think it's 80 pages, and I think you get an understanding what we're talking about.
Super, thank you. Shakira, Claudia, I'm interested in your perspective. To what extent do you think AI will transform or potentially replace aspects of software testing? I know you've been asked this before.
Yes. And this is a really interesting question. Actually, I had cut down my slides because I was time limited. It will change the way we're working. I'm working at a testing company. We're about 360 people. We are using AI to support us when we're doing test specification. We're using AI when we're doing the test automation. We're using AI when we're writing scripts for the automatic build-up of test environments using tools like Ansible or Vagrant. So we are already using it a lot. We are not using it with the idea in the head that it gives us the perfect solution. So we're using the AI, large language models, or other techniques in order to increase our efficiency. So getting an LLM, actually, for example, getting a Claude 3.5 to produce a test specification for you helps you to get around the white piece of paper problem at the very beginning, and you will be faster. Nevertheless, it will never give you the perfect solution. It will always hallucinate, and there will always be some gap. So it will change the way how we work, because we can become more efficient. It will change the skill profile that we need. So you need to learn different stuff. And if I would have to put it to the point, I don't think that AI will replace us, but potentially a colleague who knows how to use AI, because then he's faster and will get the job. So I think we really need to tackle the problem, address it, spend time with it, learn, and then use it to our advantage.
Thank you. So thank you for the webinar. Perfect timing. This is from Beza Whitlam. Apologies if I've pronounced that incorrectly. Curious about, could you walk us through how the AI ISTQB testing training is adapting to ongoing changes?
Yes. So AI is a very fast-moving target, a very fast-moving technology. The AI testing training from ISTQB is on the testing of AI systems. And despite the fact that we are looking at machine learning, it is not moving that fast. Nevertheless, we're currently working on the second edition. Keep in mind that the AI testing syllabus was released in 2021, so before ChatGPT. Yeah, everybody's excited about Chat, but before, and we are hopefully releasing a new version early 2026 with an update. If you are looking in particular for large language models and how you can use generative AI for testing, we do have a syllabus which hopefully will be released very, very soon. So, and I'm talking very, very soon, perhaps in a month, in worst case in October, where we're talking about the use of generative AI in testing. And this syllabus is planned from the very beginning to be updated every year, just to keep up with the advances in the LLMs, because they're moving very, very fast. And even if you look at the first release of ChatGPT, then you had 4.0, then you had Open.01, then you had Open.03, and the frequency with which these models are coming up is really increasing. So there are more and more stuff coming. So we need to keep up to date. And that is the Gen AI syllabus is the pilot to do it every year, so that we are as much in sync as possible.
Okay, I think this question relates. When is the certificate and syllabus update to cover LLMs and genetic AI testing? So you've covered that.
Yeah.
How long do you think it will take to implement AI in testing as part of mandatory duties?
Okay, I'm a little lost. What are mandatory duties?
I'm not 100% sure. Yulia, maybe you can just elaborate a little bit, and we'll come back to that one. Let's look at some other questions in the meantime. All right. Are there any new versions here? So we've covered this one,
yeah. We covered that one.
Okay. Jenny, great presentation. Claudia, being a manual tester, can you let me know how to transition smoothly into AI without much computer architecture knowledge?
I think you can, even as a manual tester, if you view AI, and especially the large language models, as tools to support you, you don't need to know much about the architecture below. You need to know, and I'm talking about architecture really in the sense of architecture, you need to know characteristics. So you need to know advantages, disadvantages. You need to be aware that it hallucinates and stuff like that. But other than that, just use it as any other tool. And just be aware that you need to check it. There is no way, and it will take a long time, that there's no way that the AI is perfect right now. It hallucinates quite a lot. We had a presentation yesterday, and we had like a larger presentation before a bigger group yesterday. And the guy who was presenting his AI tool said, in the morning before the presentation, it worked. But then during the presentation, it didn't work. So you need to really have a look what it is producing, if the content is good enough. And that you can do with your experience and with your brain as a manual tester.
Satya, you did your foundation level in 2023 in your job searching. You've gained some experience as a student in the testing field. Can you recommend any certification?
I would recommend test automation, because test automation is the topic that is being done in every project. And if you look at the test automation engineer, you will get the basic understanding what you have to do, how you can split it up in different levels, how you can do keyword-driven testing, and so on and so on. AI, of course, is always an interesting topic, but I think I would recommend test automation as the next.
Thank you. Neha, thank you, Claudia, for the presentation. Currently, Selenium is the most popular tool to perform automation testing. Do you think with AI-powered testing tools available in the market, that Selenium will no longer be required for automation?
Oh, well. If you look at the tool market out there, I think there is no company that says they're not doing some kind of AI under the hood. So everybody is using the buzzword on at least on their marketing material. What they're actually using needs to be seen. I think Selenium will be around for that particular niche where it's currently successful right now. If you look at Eggplant, they have been using computer vision in the sense that they would recognize on the GUI the buttons, the fields anyway. But AI will become a part of most of the tools, and not only test automation tools, also test management tools. There will be some AI components or some AI features, but I think the testing tools, test automation tools that are geared towards a particular area or particular domain will still be around. I don't think that Selenium will go away. I would seriously doubt that. Selenium with robot framework in combination is a very hip tool.
Thank you. Just to say to everybody, we're trying to look at the comments as they're coming up and answer as many questions as possible. And I can see there's some chat between people as well. So we're trying to stay a little bit focused on the order. So forgive us if we don't seem to be coming to you. So I would like to know about what AI-based tools or platforms you recommend for test automation.
You know, I don't want to market any tools, and honestly, we have been using, this is a tricky question. As I said, Eggplant uses some AI with image recognition to do it on the graphical user interface. We have been working with the robot framework, and they started to implement some AI components, some AI features, and I'm pretty sure that the other tools are also doing it. But I would have to, I don't have a proper researched list of tools or platform I could give you right now. Next time I need to go to Eurostar and have a look.
Just to answer some of the questions here. So this is an interesting one about scholarship, but also I can see in the stream that people are asking about discounts and what have you for exams. Now, just to explain that, Claudia, even though she's president of the ISTQB, she doesn't offer the exams. That's done through exam providers in the ISTQB world. So part of this, then sorry, but no. And if you are looking for the certification exams or to know more, then please go to the ISTQB website. You'll find details of the member boards there and exam providers. And we're also being asked a little bit about how you pass the exams. Advice would be to go to the ISTQB website, look at the syllabi and mock exams, etc., etc. So apologies, we won't be able to answer most of those questions very easily. Claudia, just going back to scholarship, at the moment we don't have such a thing as a scholarship.
No, we don't have that right now, no.
As AI becomes more integrated into testing processes, how can we effectively address potential security risks? Nice question.
Yeah, security is a big point, especially for companies that produce products. I'll give you a nice example. We are working with a customer in the medical domain areas, medical device domain, and they don't want their particular information to go into the cloud somewhere. So they said due to security reasons, they want an on-premise installation where nothing goes to the internet or to the outside world, and all the artificial or the AI component that we used there was actually a combination of Claude 3.5, or from some tests we started with Llama 3.1 and then we went to Claude 3.5, but it was a closed environment. So what we see more and more is that actually companies try to mitigate the security by installing their own AI systems inside a company, not letting anything out. And that can be these open source models, but even the bigger company who have plenty of money have like their own ChatGPT version. Yeah, they downloaded the entire thing and have now ChatGPT at their company. So yeah, security issues, especially leaking relevant information, is a big issue. And a lot of companies are worried about that.
Very wise. Can an AI certification be cleared without training? How do I have to prepare for it?
Well, do you want to answer? Well, all of the all of the ISTQB certification can be done without training. So you can download the syllabus and study for the exam. Nevertheless, especially for AI, where we have lots of hands-on exercises, I would strongly recommend to do a training. But you can try without. You would have to look at if you go to the ISTQB website, you can get the syllabus and you can get a sample exam paper and you can prepare by that. But talking to other people, discussing it, getting the advice or the insight from a trainer, I think is still very valuable. So I would not recommend it, but you can do it. And people are, for AI, actually, I don't know the numbers, but for the other certification modules, people are actually also doing that.
Are there any books that you would recommend in order to set the foundations of AI testing?
To my knowledge, we at least have a book in Germany, which is called Basis. This is an AI testing. And if I'm not completely mistaken, perhaps is Maria still in the call? because I know that Natya said there was somebody in Georgia writing a book on AI testing, and I think that would be in English then. And I'm pretty sure that perhaps, Debbie, there's some more. Isn't somebody in the UK who wrote a book on AI testing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, one of the things I would have said is go to the back of the syllabus for AI, CTAI, and all the sorts of references in there. But I guess, as we spoke about earlier, things are moving quite quickly, so it's looking to see what is new to the market. You've mentioned the new Gen AI syllabus will be coming out, so I imagine there'll be some references in there, and also when we have the update to the Certified Tester AI syllabus, I'd imagine some references in there. So my advice is always keep an eye on what's happening in the ISTQB socials and news on the website. Watch out for those new syllabi, because often there's some good references in there. But maybe it's something to think about, Claudia, how do ISTQB share information about books and stuff? Maybe one will take away and have a little think about. Patricia, I recognize this name. Hello. If QA is many times foreseen as a woman's role, how can then women begin to be recognized with true value, independently of the tools and the frameworks? And any tips from your experience, Claudia?
I do agree that I see a little more women in the QA department than in the development department. However, I see lots and lots of men. I think the value of QA is independent of women or men. And I think the value of doing an excellent job is also independent of tools and frameworks. So my recommendation, my advice, or my experience is actually, if you are passionate about something and are working hard to achieve a goal and trying to reach the goal that you have set for yourself, people see that you are working hard and will recognize it and will recognize you as producing value for the entire project. So stick with it. Honestly, work hard and try to do the best.
Will the Gen AI syllabus have to be obtained only after the basic AI certificate?
No. After foundation level, no. The 2 AI certificates, one with the Gen AI coming out, which is the application of generative AI to testing, and the old AI testing, which is testing of AI system, we're moving to two different branches. So no, it won't be a prerequisite.
Let's have a look. Why is it so difficult to find a job in testing, manual UAT sector? We don't know which part of the world that is coming from.
Well, if you go back 25, 30 years, getting a job in manual tester or user acceptance test as UAT was definitely easier. Now, a lot of stuff has moved to automated testing. Nevertheless, we still have a lot of testing with systems. For example, if you have a computer tomograph where the user acceptance test has to be done, not only because it makes sense, but also because it is FDA regulated and you need to show the testing. So I guess depending where you are in the world, there are domains. Medical is one, automotive is also one. There are domains that need to show user acceptance tests where you do have manual testers. And just looking at our company, I do agree that in comparison to 30 years ago, it decreased, but we still have a stable group that needs to do manual testing because it is required.
Perfect. We've covered this a little bit. Are there any recommended AI-based course certifications for software testers?
We covered that.
ISTQB CTAI and the new Gen AI that's coming out soon. As a refresher, I'd like to know where to start on AI and testing techniques.
Go and read the syllabus because I think it's a beautiful intro. I like it quite a lot. If you want to do some more reading, let me pitch a little bit something else. There is an ISO standard. If you are perhaps new to testing, you might not know. We have the ISO IEC IEEE 29119, which is a series of standards on testing. They also have a part 11 on guidance to testing AI systems, and that is also a very nice introduction.
Thank you. That's interesting. How do you know if the AI is hallucinating?
Well, if it is, let me give you the example with the medical device domain. We developed this little application where we actually use the LLM to specify the test cases. And when it's referencing requirements that don't exist, you know it's hallucinating because that number is not there. When it is coming up with facts like inventing new interfaces which are not there, then you know that it is hallucinating. So taking the expert knowledge, and we have in that company, we have a lot of testers that have been around, so they are very experienced. They can look at the test specification produced by the LLM and say, yeah, fine, invented, fine, invented, so that you can, if you have the experience, you can look at it. I am 100% with you. As a newbie, it is very, very hard to tell. How would you know if you don't understand the system you're testing? You're new to this domain, will be really tricky. So somebody who's a newcomer working with an AI system, please just don't believe everything it's telling you. But if you have experience, you can tell. And sometimes it's really easy. If it references a requirement ID that doesn't exist, it's really easy. But you would not be the only person to go into that trap. Some people learned hard.
Thank you. Diksha, thank you for an amazing session. Yeah, thank you, Claudia. I just wanted to know how ISTQB plans to help upskill testers in AI-based testing. So
yeah, these two syllabi. So the AI-based testing syllabus, which is already available in the version from 2021. So it was, let me just rephrase that one more time. It was already a hot topic before ChatGPT. It was already really interesting. And definitely the Gen AI, who has been just through beta and which will hopefully be released soon, definitely this year. So it will come out really soon.
That's wonderful. I think it looks as though we've come to the end of questions, and time-wise, we're kind of there now. Oh, one more. Okay. How do you fight with hallucinations at your job?
No, I'm not quite sure what
it means. I suspect. How do you deal with them?
Yeah, and hallucinations coming from an AI-based components which we use as a job. Yeah, what we did actually in that prototype that we created is we have three spots where a human tester can intervene and say works, doesn't work, and change the proposed text and then go into the next step. So we added some, if you want to put it that way, we added a number of quality gates to make sure that the hallucinations are kept at bay and don't propagate through the entire answer that it gives you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think we're going to say a huge thank you to Claudia, and also a big thank you to Women in Tech. I can see lots of comments saying thank you for an amazing webinar, and Claudia, that was really super. There's a few people asking about LinkedIn handles. Claudia, if you just Claudia Jussesiga, you'll find her on LinkedIn very easily. And yeah, I think, any final words there, Claudia, for all the lovely people who are watching?
No, thank you. I thank you for inviting me. I do love to talk to people on that topic because I think it's important. I'm very passionate about it, and I love to share. So it's about inclusion. It's about working together. It's about community building and supporting women in testing and in tech.
Absolutely. Claudia, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. I know that ISTQB will pop this recording onto the YouTube channel, ISTQB YouTube channel, with the recordings from the other two sessions we've done with Women in Tech, and indeed some other interviews that we've done with some other very amazing women in testing. So they're there to watch.
Stay tuned. Exactly.
Thank you so much. Cheerio then, everybody. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye, everybody.